I got here. This has been on my heart for a long time. January of 2024, God started to deposit into my spirit to start talking, recording messages, thoughts. Okay, let me go back a little bit more. In August of 2023, I started recording voice notes to myself. Thoughts, feelings, progress, where I was at, how I was feeling, what I was going through. And I kept that as an audio journal. But I guess that it was for me to get into the practice and develop a habit of talking out loud, of voicing my thoughts, of audibly processing my steps. And to be honest, I think that's where everything started rapidly going downhill. There were a lot of changes, a lot of things happening in that moment. So I started recording my voice, and it was like me talking to myself, me talking to God, a lot of times me talking to God, and just recording those. And in January of 2024, God deposited in my spirit that He wanted me to start talking, sharing, like lessons, perspectives, just things that I've learned from reading my word, perspectives that I would have, things that stood out to me and how I could have made it relatable to everyday life, or how it made sense to me, and probably how it could make sense for somebody else. Then in July of that same year, so last year, I felt like, okay, when I really decided to pursue purpose, I felt like, well, I think that this is the direction in which I was being led to go. So I bought this mic a year ago, and I got there, I started recording, and I was still not sure what I was doing. It still was feeling wrong. It still felt like, you sure this is what you're supposed to be doing? But I know that this is what it is, but I don't know if I'm going about it the right way. And so I did that for a little bit, and I slowed down. I stopped. I was like, I don't know, I'm just not feeling it, and I don't want to push anything. Let me just sit with this and see what happens next. Then I got to the point where we're in January of 2025, and God asked me to put something down that I struggled with because I did not want to have to do that. I did not want to have to put this one thing. I was like, God, is there any way we can work around this? And He was like, it kind of showed me what it would have looked like if I didn't. You're going to get to a place where you're stuck, you're overwhelmed, and then you're going to be calling out for me to help you. And I'm asking you right now to trust me when I say you need to put this thing down. And I was like, this is not going to look good. This is, right on brand for a version of me as I'm trying to rebrand. You know what I'm saying? And so I struggled with it, but I said, okay, let's do it. And I did. And it was a very emotional move for me to make, but I did it. And I knew that as soon as I did, and the emotions kind of simmered from that, God said, okay, this is what I want you to do next. Now that we have this time, I was like, oh, okay, I see, okay. So I know that I had to do this. I just did not know how. I didn't know, I've been toying with a setup or the point of view, like, what am I going to share? What am I going to talk about? What is this going to look like? What's this too much to share? How do I share my story without outing anybody else's? Because a story has 3 parts. There's that person's side, there's my side, and then there's the truth. So I got to this place where I'm like, okay, this is what has to happen next. This was in January, right? I was working on a project for my brother's wedding, and so as soon as that was over, because God is very gracious, and He knows me. He knows everything that I can handle, and He knows what to just tip me over to the edge of frustration. I wasn't sure how to approach this. I was not sure which angle to take. I was not sure what to share. I wasn't sure how much was too much, but at the same time, I did not want to come here and be so vague that I am not relatable. So vague that there is, I just trashed the whole idea of being transparent. I want to be transparent, but I don't want to, shiny lights on somebody else looking bad. And so the path was looking a little clearer, but still very confusing. I wasn't sure, oh, what do we do here? Where do we go from here? And so I found myself slipping into another depressive episode where I was just doom scrolling. And I am knee deep at this point into this whole Diddy and Cassie situation. And something that was just resonating with me a lot is the fact that she took so long to get her story out there. She endured this for so long and nobody knew. Everybody was still looking at Diddy as this, music mogul and everything that he is, while she was suffering with the monster that she knew him to be. And years later, she's now getting the opportunity to tell her story. And I was like, how? I knew exactly how one can find themselves in a situation where they backed into silence because a story is so ugly. Who is going to believe? How would you look? And how would they feel? And the best solution in that time might just be silence. And, she got to a point where she was able to tell her story. But then there was another aspect that stood out to me, the way that she said she went to rehab. She was really struggling. She got herself to rehab. And while she was in rehab, she got to a point where she wrote a book. She wrote a book to express everything that she was going through. And she said the reason why is because she wanted him to understand. And I was like, baby girl, that man does not need help understanding how you felt, understanding what his actions did to you. He knew exactly what his actions were doing to you. He just did not care. And so many times I hear the same sentiments echoed. I just want them to understand. I just need them to understand. I just need them to know what. And that was me for many, many, many years. Like, I just need him to understand. I just need him to know. I just need him to know. I just need to go to every extreme so that you could understand that's what your actions are doing to me, how deeply your actions are hitting. And it is a tough pill to swallow when you get to the understanding and the realization and to accept the fact that they do not care. And it's not out of malice. Primarily, it's not out of malice. Let me say that someone gets into a point where they are indifferent about the way in which their actions impact another individual. It's from their own trauma, their own deep-seated hurts, where they were once in a position where they were deeply hurt by somebody who didn't care. And so I said that not to demonize or to paint the other party ugly. It was just, that was helpful for me to understand, like, how could someone be so cruel to not care, especially me, like I have so much compassion that it sickens me sometimes. But I will go above and beyond, inconveniencing myself a lot of times. If it means that me going that route will save you feeling a certain way, will save you from enduring a certain thing. And so when that was not reciprocated, I had a hard time accepting that. And so I felt like, well, maybe it's because they don't understand. So let me do everything as I can to make them understand. And that's not it. So anyway, that's where I was at, listening to Cassie talk about her experience so many years later and asking myself those two questions. Are you going to be silenced because this story too ugly and you're afraid of how bad it'll make everybody else look? Are you going to tell your story because you have a part to play? Like, is your story too? You have learned so many lessons. You are so much stronger. You are so much more wise. You have learned so many important lessons and values and gems. You have reestablished your worth and your identity. You're tapped into a source in order to get to that level of healing. Why should you keep this a secret? I was like, all right, well, this is what we're doing. I started to put strategy and ideas as to how to do this, asking God, like, how are we going to do this? And when I got the clearest blueprint that I have gotten out of this whole process, from the process of God letting me know, hey, at some point in time, I'm going to need you to start talking. And me going from absolutely not, like, these voice notes could stay right here, to, well, okay, maybe I could talk about something else, to, no, this needs to get out there because there's somebody else that needs to hear your story. And to be completely honest, he did say this to me. I have it written in my journal. Somebody's going to need your story someday. And that's why you can't find a story like yours. Because I kept looking and I wasn't seeing anybody whose story was like mine to find out, so what you did and how did you navigate making certain decisions. And, how do you forgive? How do you move on? Like, is this something that you could just move on from? And then, like, how do you pick up these pieces and move on? I've seen so many women endure similar situations, but none was quite like mine. None was quite as brutal, as ugly, as hurtful, as damaging. And I'm not discrediting anybody else's experience, but it's just, I just couldn't find a story that resonated. And I said that to God. I was like, I keep looking for something that looks like this. And he's like, well, stop looking because you're not going to find one. And we're here. You're going to write your story. And somebody is going to need to hear it one day. So here we are, 3 years later. And I have so much that I want to express. And I want to make it very clear what my intention is. I don't want to start another story like, the Reese's Pieces story that went viral. That's not my intention. I have learned where I went wrong. At the end of the day, I started to realize that my identity was wrapped up in the wrong things, in the wrong person. And when that collapsed, I lost myself and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces and to move on from there. And so God has restored me. He has restored who I am. He has restored my identity in Him. He has shown me my abilities, my powers, my strength, capabilities. And I could not have done that had I still been in a certain situation. I started this video by expressing that now that I am here, I just have a bunch of questions that are resurfacing. And I don't know if it's because I have to start back from the beginning as to how I ended up here. A bunch of questions keep popping up like, well, why this really had to happen? And it's really difficult for me to separate myself from this and not look at, well, there was a whole other individual who had choices to make based on their decisions. This is where we are. And I can look at it from the aspect of where I am now, but I feel like, was it absolutely necessary? Like, did we have to go through all of this? We have to do all of this? Like, we can find another way to get to here. Like, we can find another route. It just seems so brutal. It's difficult also. And I'm pausing because every question that's popping up in my head, I kind of get in the answer to. Like, why this had to happen? Like, why? And still a part of me felt like, well, like my identity was so wrapped up in there that a part of me still felt like, well, all of this had to be for Him. All of this had to be to save Him because He is in such a bad space. And, I look back at that like, oh, I completely erased myself. So I got so used to doing that naturally, that's the first thought that I gravitated to. But the reason why we had to go through all of this was because, and can I just say, like, sometimes God will sit with you long enough for you to figure out, oh, wait, that's not making any sense. And he'll be like, okay, good. Because I didn't want to be the one to say it. Oh my gosh, there's so many things. I just really want, my heart is that, my heart is really for women who love so strongly that they forget themselves. Like, they see so much potential in their partner that they forget themselves. That's my heart. To get them to understand that just as with everything else in life, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. There are boundaries, and sometimes we don't see exactly where things start going wrong. We don't see the little red flags that are popping up. We don't see them, or we may see them and not recognize them at all. And you get yourself to a place where you invest so much in this thing that you don't want. Like, you're still hopeful, like, it don't have to end like this. I could still do this. I could still push through. I could still give more of me if it means that could save us. And my heart is really for those who are at that point. That is a very dangerous place to be. That you're too far gone, but not too far for God to get you out of that and to rewire your thinking and to shift your whole view of what it is to be loved and what it is to love. And if it means getting yourself to a place where you are erased in order for us to save a thing, then that's too far. That's a lot of mess. But it's not too much mess. And as I mentioned before, like, my story is very, very messy. It's not nice. But God used that mess. He didn't wipe it away. He used it